There is a moment in your past that you still think about. You were standing somewhere or sitting across from someone, and a feeling came over you. Not a thought, a feeling. Something in your chest or your stomach turned and said, quietly but clearly, "No. Something is wrong here. Do not trust this person. Do not sign this. Do not marry this one. Do not take this road. Do not leave the child there." And the feeling did not come with evidence. It could not defend itself in the court of reasons. Everyone around you said everything was fine. The numbers said fine. The smiles said fine. And so you did what you were trained your whole life to do. You overruled it. You said to yourself, "Don't be silly. You're being paranoid. You're overreacting. Give them a chance." And you went forward. And you were right. The feeling, I mean. The feeling was right. Maybe it took a month to find out. Maybe it took 20 years. But the day came when you stood in the wreckage of that decision and heard your own voice say the words that every person on this earth eventually says. I knew it. I knew it from the beginning. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. Tonight I am going to talk about that knowing, what it is, where it comes from, why you were taught to ignore it, and why, in the years you have left, you must never overrule it again. Because that quiet voice you have been dismissing your entire life is not your imagination. It is the oldest and most loyal advisor you have, and it has never once been on anyone's side but yours. Let me tell you first what the modern world says intuition is, and then let me tell you what my people knew it to be, and you can decide which explanation matches your own 70 years of evidence. The modern world, when it is being generous, says intuition is fast thinking, pattern recognition, your brain noticing 1,000 small details, the tightness in a man's smile, the half-second delay before an answer, the thing that was said slightly too smoothly, and adding them up beneath your awareness, and delivering the total as a feeling. And I will tell you, the modern world is not wrong about this. It is only incomplete. Because yes, you have been reading human beings for 70 years. You have seen 10,000 faces, heard 10,000 promises, watched which ones held and which ones broke. You are carrying a library of human patterns so vast that no computer on this earth can match it. And when your stomach turns at a handshake, that library is speaking. That part is real, and it alone would be reason enough to trust yourself. But my grandmother would say the library is only half the answer. She said the other half is older than your own experience. She called intuition the first language, the language every living thing speaks and no living thing is taught. The deer does not learn from experience which silence in the forest means danger. It knows before its first danger. The bird does not study the sky to know the storm is coming. It is gone before the first cloud. And you, she said, are not separate from that web of knowing just because you wear shoes and read books. You are an animal of this earth, the finest sensing creature this land ever produced. And underneath your education, underneath your politeness, underneath 70 years of being told to be reasonable, the first language is still running. Still reading rooms, still reading roads, still reading people. The feeling you call intuition is two rivers meeting. Everything you have lived and everything your kind has ever known, that is what speaks when your chest says no. And you were taught to answer it. Don't be silly. Let me give you the story my grandmother used to teach me this because I was a doubting young man once. And this is what ended my doubting. There was a man in our community, in her younger days, who came through selling something. And I no longer remember what he sold because what he sold was never the point. He was, by every account, the most charming man anyone had met in years. Warm, funny, remembered everyone's name. The whole community took to him. except 2 judges. My grandmother, whose stomach, she said, closed like a fist the first time he laughed. And every dog in the settlement. She always said that part with a raised finger. Every dog. Animals who had never met him, who knew nothing of money or charm, backed away from that man, or growled low, or would not enter a room he was in. And the people said what people always say. The dogs are being strange. And my grandmother said nothing, but she watched, and she kept her money and her signature to herself. And months later the truth came out, as it always comes out, and the charming man had done real damage to real families who had trusted him, and he was gone by then, the way such men are always gone by then. And my grandmother told me the lesson is not that I was clever. The lesson is that the dogs and I were reading the same page. The dogs did not have my experience of human faces. I did not have their nose. But the first language spoke to both of us because it speaks to everything alive, and the only creatures in the whole settlement who got fooled were the ones educated enough to overrule it. Sit with that last line. The only ones fooled were the ones educated enough to overrule it. Every animal on this earth trusts its knowing without shame. Only humans have been talked out of it. And that raises the question that should trouble you, the question that troubled me for years. If this counselor is so old, so loyal, and so accurate, how did we ever learn to ignore it? Who taught us that? And why? Because nobody abandons their best advisor by accident. It takes training. And tonight I'm going to show you exactly how that training was done to you. Before I share the next teaching, I need to tell you something. I'm not going to be here forever, and most of what I know was never written anywhere. So I sat down and I wrote it, all of it. 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received. The ones about the first language and how to hear it again. The ones about trusting what you know before you know how you know it. The ones I have never said on camera. It is called The Native Way, and it costs less than 1 dinner you will not remember. Scan the code on your screen or look in the comments, but do not leave yet, because I am about to tell you why you stopped trusting it, and who benefited from teaching you to doubt yourself, and that part of tonight's teaching may make you angry. It should. So why did you stop trusting it? You were not born doubting yourself. Watch a small child who does not want to be held by a certain relative. The child does not reason. The child does not weigh social consequences. The child arches its back and cries, and its whole small body says no. That child is fluent in the first language. Now watch what we do to that child. We say, don't be rude, give your uncle a hug, smile, be nice. And with 1,000 small corrections like that over years, we teach the child the lesson that nearly destroyed you, the lesson that was nearly fatal to some of you watching. We teach the child that other people's comfort matters more than the child's knowing, that the feeling is rude, that the alarm is the problem, not the thing the alarm is ringing about. And little girls, and I say this directly to the women watching because you are most of my circle, little girls of your generation received this training doubled and tripled. Be sweet, be agreeable. Don't make a scene, don't be difficult. He didn't mean anything by it. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. By the time you were 20, the finest alarm system this earth ever built had been trained to apologize for ringing. And then you walked into a world full of people who had every reason to keep it that way. Because understand this, your intuition has enemies. Not mystical ones, practical ones. Every manipulator, every swindler, every controlling partner, every smooth-talking taker who ever crossed your path had exactly one obstacle standing between them and what they wanted from you. The feeling. That first uneasy turn in your stomach when their smile did not reach their eyes. And so what does every one of them do, without ever attending a class on it? They attack the feeling. You're paranoid, you're crazy, you're too sensitive. You always think the worst of people. After everything I've done for you, hear an old man who has watched this pattern for 70 years. The people who worked hardest to make you doubt your intuition were, every single time, the exact people your intuition was warning you about. The honest ones never needed you doubtful. Only the wolves lobby against the alarm. Now let me tell you how to recognize the true voice, because this is where people get lost, and it matters. Not every feeling is intuition. You have fears, and fears are loud. You have wounds, and wounds shout. So how do you tell the first language from ordinary fear? My grandmother gave me the way, and in 50 years it has not failed me. She said, "Fear argues. Intuition states." Listen to the difference. Fear runs in circles. It builds stories. It says, what if this, and what if that, and imagine if, and it gets louder the longer you listen, and it exhausts you. That is not the first language. That is the frightened mind chewing on itself. Intuition does not argue. Intuition says one thing, quietly, once, and then stands there. Something is wrong with this. Do not go. Not him. Wait. It does not build a case. It does not raise its voice. It has the stillness of a person who knows and therefore does not need to shout. And here is the second mark. Fear is about imagined futures. Intuition is about the present thing in front of you. Fear says, what if the plane crashes? Intuition says, something is off about this man at your door, right now. And the third mark, the deepest one. When you obey fear, you feel smaller afterward, more trapped. When you obey intuition, even when it costs you something, even when you cannot justify it to anyone, you feel a strange settledness. The body exhales, because you finally answered the oldest counselor in the language it understands. Obedience. I want to give you one story of obedience so you can see what it looks like in a real life. Because most intuition stories are about the times we did not listen, and I think you need one about a time somebody did. A woman I knew, widowed, careful, was on the edge of signing over a large piece of her savings to an investment brought to her by a man from her own church. Everything checked. The papers looked right. Her own son-in-law, who understood money, had looked it over and found nothing wrong. Other people from the congregation were in it and happy. Every reasonable voice in her life said yes, and her stomach said no. Quietly. Once. The way it does. No argument, no story, just, not this. And she sat with the papers on her kitchen table for 3 days, feeling foolish, an old woman defying her son-in-law's math and her whole congregation's judgment on the strength of a feeling she could not describe. And on the 3rd day she called the man and said, in the way of women of her generation, "Thank you kindly, but I have decided to keep things simple at my age." And she took the disapproval. The son-in-law's little sigh, the feeling of being seen as a timid old woman. She took it all. 14 months later, the whole thing came down, the way these things come down, and it took the savings of half the people who had smiled at her doubts. And I asked her afterward, "How did you know?" And she gave me the answer that is the whole teaching of tonight in one sentence. She said, "I didn't know. I just finally decided that at my age, I'd rather look foolish for 3 days than be broke for the rest of my life." Hear that. She did not need certainty. She did not need to justify the feeling or win the argument. She just needed to be willing to look foolish. That is the entire price of obeying your intuition. Looking foolish sometimes, to people who know less than your stomach does. It is the best bargain you will ever be offered. And now the part I most want to say. What do you do with all the times you did not listen? Because I know what surfaced in you tonight while I spoke. The marriage you knew about on the wedding day. Some of you knew walking down the aisle, you have told me so. In those exact words, a voice said, "Do not do this." And you kept walking, because the hall was paid for and the guests were seated. The business partner, the signature, the person you let into your home, your family, your accounts, over the turning of your own stomach. And the temptation now is to spend your remaining years in the courtroom of hindsight, prosecuting yourself. I knew. Why didn't I listen? What is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Hear me. Nothing was ever wrong with you. You did not fail to listen because you were foolish. You failed to listen because you were trained not to, by decades of voices telling you that being agreeable was more important than being right. And then that training was exploited by the exact people it was warning you about. The alarm worked perfectly your entire life, every single time. It was never the alarm that failed. It was the world that talked you out of it. So do not grieve your intuition as broken. It was never broken. It is sitting in you right now, patient as it has always been, unoffended by 50 years of being overruled, ready to serve you the moment you turn back to it. That is the astonishing thing about the first language. It holds no grudge. Dismiss it 10,000 times and it will still speak up, quietly, once, the 10,001st time. There is no counselor on this earth more loyal than that. And I want to say one thing more about those old regrets. The wedding aisle knowings, the signatures, the doors you opened against your own stomach. Because there is a way to hold them that heals instead of tortures. Every one of those moments, look at what it actually proves. It proves the equipment works. You knew. Before the evidence, before the years, before anyone else saw it, you knew. That is not a record of your foolishness. Read correctly, it is a record of your gift. You have been carrying a flawless instrument through a world that taught you not to look at it. The tragedy was never in you, and here is what changes everything about the arithmetic. The instrument does not retire. It does not weaken with the body. If anything, and every elder I have ever respected has said the same, the knowing gets louder in the last decades, clearer, harder to talk over, as the noise of ambition and approval finally dies down. Which means the finest years of your intuition are not behind you. They are now. The wolves that circle people your age, and they do circle, the scams aimed at seniors, the smooth voices on the phone, the sudden new friends who appear when a widow's grief is fresh, all of them are counting on the same old training, that you will be too polite to trust your stomach. Disappoint them. You are done being polite to wolves. You have the sharpest instrument you have ever had, and, for the first time in your life, nothing to prove and no one to impress. That combination, an elder with awakened intuition and no need for approval, is the most unfoolable creature this earth produces. Become it. So here is how you live from now on, in the years that remain, and this is the whole practice. From tonight, the quiet voice gets a vote. Not always the deciding vote, you are still wise, you still weigh things, but it gets a vote, spoken out loud, at your own table. When the feeling comes, you no longer say, "Don't be silly." You say, "I hear you. What do you know?" You pause before the signature, the visit, the yes, and you consult the counselor you ignored for 50 years. And when the choice is close and the evidence is even, you let the feeling break the tie, every time. Because you have run the other experiment, overruling it for your whole life, and you have 70 years of results, and you know how that experiment came out. And one more thing, the last thing. Teach this to the young ones. When your granddaughter says she does not like someone and cannot say why, do not correct her. Do not say, "Be nice." Look her in the eye and tell her what nobody told you. That feeling is wisdom. Never apologize for it. Never let anyone talk you out of it. The ones who try are the ones it warns you about. One sentence like that, from an elder to a child, can undo the training before the training takes. It can save a life you will never see. Because the wolves are not gone from this world. But a generation that trusts its first language is a generation the wolves go hungry in. If what you heard today stayed with you, the book is there. The Native Way. 20 teachings, 100 pages, written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together. Scan the QR code on the screen with your phone or find the link in the comments. Read one chapter. Sit with it. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments the time your gut told you the truth and you didn't listen, or the time you did and it saved you. I read every comment. And if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.